Hello and welcome to the channel. Time to catch up with the sale results for Mathewsons Classic Car Auction for July 2025. And I think this is the biggest sale this year with 414 cars. Again, some interesting and varied lots, but as we're limited on time, I won't be covering the full sale results. I'll just be looking at the lots that stood out to me. And as I've said before, the prices listed are the hammer price. So remember, the buyer's premium and VAT need to be added on top to work out the total. So let's make a start with lot 10. And it's a 1967 Hillman Imp Californian with just 26,000 miles recorded. And we're told it's totally original. Finished in Ming blue with a contrasting light blue interior. And this model was only built between 1967 to 1970. I quite like these coupe style roofs, and I think it looks to be a very nice and smart example. The estimate £8,000 to £10,000, and the bidding opened at £5,000, and there was good strong bidding on this one. It sold for £12,900, and it's on its way to Norwich. Now that seems like a pretty good result to me, and to be honest, I thought it might struggle to achieve the estimate. On to lot 14, the 2006 Chrysler Crossfire SRT/6, the performance version. And it comes from a period when Chrysler merged with Mercedes-Benz and the company became known as Daimler Chrysler, or as the Germans would say, Daimler. It went on sale in 2004 and it remained on sale until 2008 and was built by Karmann at Osnabrück in Germany. It used the first generation Mercedes SLK R170 platform and it shared 80% of its components. Available as a two-door fastback coupe or a two-door convertible. And they were powered by a 3.2 litre 18-valve V6 engine and were available with either a 5-speed auto or a 6-speed manual box. Rear-wheel drive, of course. And the SRT6 models, however, came with the supercharged version of the M112 engine, built by Mercedes performance branch AMG, and it delivered 330 brake horsepower, and it only came as a 5-speed auto. Now, these cars aren't something that appeal to everybody. But I don't mind them because there's something different. And as a modern classic, they're not particularly expensive when finding a good one. The estimate was set at £5,000 to £6,000 and it was bid to £3,800 before the auction began, but it only achieved a provisional sale of £3,900, which underlines what I said, they're not for everyone. They're like Marmite. The next lot I'm going to be taking a look at is lot 50, the 2001 Audi A2 SE. Now, the A2 was notable for being constructed of aluminium, and along with its efficient engine, it was said to be highly fuel efficient. You had a choice of a 1.4 or a 1.6 petrol, or a 1.2 or a 1.4 diesel. Now, this car has the 1.4 petrol engine. And I can't say I was ever really taken with the styling of these, and I always thought them a bit odd. That said, every now and again something comes along and challenges you to think again, and that's exactly what this car has done to me. It instantly grabbed my attention because it just looked so right, and it looks like it's just come off the production line. The colour, I can't say I recall seeing one in this green metallic before. And I think it looks really well and it suits the car, and a change from the usual silver or pale blue. Then you see the mileage of 18,572 and it all fits. The wheels are like the TT's slatted wheels, which I quite like, and the interior, like the exterior, looks simply as new, and it's got a panoramic sunroof. The underneath also looks factory fresh, and look how nice it is in the door shuts. Originally registered by Pool Audi in Dorset, I suspect it could have led a fairly sheltered and pampered life. And I think it's a really nice car. And yes, I would happily own one as nice as this. This car was sold previously through Mathewsons back in July 2024. And the hammer price then saw itself for £7,900. It's covered a little under 600 miles in that time. And the estimate now, £4,000 to £5,000, which makes it look rather attractive. So I wonder how it will do this time out. Well, it received 15 bids before the auction began and it stood at £8,000 before it opened. And it looked as though the owner was on track to recover the money. The bidding was all done and dusted very quickly, with the hammer falling at £8,300. So overall, it sold for more than the previous hammer price, but for less after figuring in previous buyer's premium and VAT, and this time entrance fees, delivery to the auction, and seller's premium, but still a good result as the car stands. Lot 73, 1974 Ford Escort two-door 1100 base model with an estimate of £15,000 to £16,000. Crazy, isn't it? And it could be so easy to ignore this car, but on closer inspection, you begin to understand why. 17,438 miles from new, and the engine sounds sweet on tickover. Zai bought it from new, and the current owner covered the car some time ago in grease to protect it. Under the bonnet, it looks much worse, but Jack removed a small area to show what it could look like. And we're told the bodywork forms a good base. But whoever buys it, let's hope they leave it as the model it left the factory, rather than making it into another fast Ford. On to the sale results. There were no bids pre-auction. However, bidding opened at £11,000 and it closed with a provisional bid of £13,100. Moving on to lot 84, an E21 BMW 316, which was only available with two doors. And personally, I think it looks rather appealing in this colour scheme, both inside and out. Just over 52,000 miles, and it looks to be in remarkably good condition. I'd say with just a small amount of paintwork, I'd also have the wheels painted, and I think it deserves the expense of having the bumpers rechromed, and you could end up with a real show winner. The estimate £2,900 to £3,900, and it had already been bid to £5,500 before the auction started. I'm not surprised it exceeded the estimate. The auction got underway and the bids kept coming in, finally selling for just over double the upper estimate at £7,900, and it's off to Wakefield. And the next one up is lot 86, its predecessor, the A2 series, but in this case it's a 1972 BMW 2002 Touring. In 1971, the A2 series received a facelift, which saw the introduction of the Touring model, and it had a relatively short production run, which ended in 1974. Now, this car's got just 43,000 miles recorded, and it comes from the same stable as the BMW 316. Two owners from new, and its original owner was Her Grace Mary Duchess of Roxburgh. Now, this looks to be another remarkably sound example, and with just a little work would look fantastic. A lovely thing. Estimate £7,500 to £9,500, but this one only received one bid prior to the auction of £7,500, and it looked as though possibly this one was going to struggle on the day. But when the bidding got underway, it proved more popular, soon reaching its upper estimate, and it continued its upward trajectory, finally selling for £13,400, which I would say is an excellent result, given the fact that it's still a work in progress. Lot 122, the 1985 Opal Manta GT 1.8S. Just two owners from new and coming from long-term ownership, and just 43,000 miles. It's said to have been laid up for 22 years, possibly longer. And underneath all that dirt, it looks to be a very sound car. I'm sure it will attract a lot of interest. Let's see how it got on. Estimate £2,500 to £3,500, and the bidding opened at £8,750, and it ended with a provisional sale of £10,250. And this is now showing as sold. Moving on to lot 138, and that's the 2013 Fiat 500, and it's a model I never knew existed, and that's the 695 Abarth Maserati edition. Now, I knew of the Ferrari edition, but not this one. 37,000 miles recorded, and it's finished in Ponte Vecchio Bordeaux, which is a Maserati colour, and it's complemented with a sand beige leather interior. It's sitting on 17-inch alloys, which have a trident design inspired by Maserati. It's also an automatic and it comes with flappy paddles on the steering wheel. It's also convertible and it has a claimed top speed of 140 miles an hour with a 0 to 62 time under 7 seconds. Believed to be one of only 15 UK cars. Estimate 19 to 22,000 pounds. Now there were no pre-bids, but when the auction got underway, the bidding was furious, with the car selling when the hammer fell at 23,500 pounds. Another excellent result. And the owner of this one also submitted a Ferrari edition with just 4,500 miles, and that's lot 617. Lot 144, the Ford Puma Racing Edition. Remember this one? It's making its second appearance after failing to sell last month for its provisional bid of 4,400. There appeared to be a little interest last month. However, this is one that bucked the trend, and this time round there seem to be plenty of bids, finally selling for £7,100. Because more often than not, a car doesn't usually sell for more than the first sale price. A good result for the vendor. Lot 174, a 1968 Bedford CA Dormobile, and it's the Romney model. Now, the Dormobile company was initially based in Folkestone in Kent, and it was such a success that the term Dormobile became synonymous with camper conversions built by other companies, in much the same way we talk about Hoovers not built by Hoover. The company is now based in Lyndhurst in the New Forest, and I passed their company just the other day. The CA was built between 1952 to 1969, and I think this powder blue suits it so well. And the pop-up roof was known for its distinctive red and white striped canopy. My parents owned a split-screen Dormobile, and it took us to places we might otherwise have not been able to visit. And we had so many happy travellers in it, and it left us with some stories to tell. And I think that this looks to be a really nice example. And I think it's very impressive, both externally, internally, and underneath. And it's showing 43,000 miles. It seems too cheap to me at £8,500 to £9,500. And I would say it's worth every penny, in my opinion. And although it'll probably struggle to sell for more, I still feel it's too cheap for such a nice example. The bidding opened at £7,000 and it closed with a provisional sale at just £7,800. Far too cheap. Lot 179, a 1929 Auckland, and what a lovely old thing. Believed to be the only one in the UK. Just look at those wood spoke wheels. Says it all, really, doesn't it? Estimate £8,500 to £9,500. Well, it achieved a very provisional sale at £6,700. Lot 236, the 1994 Mercedes S500 Coupe. Now, with every auction, you always get some surprises, and this was a real surprise result. Estimated at £3,500 to £4,500, and it had 73,627 miles. And for so long, these cars have struggled to sell for good money. So the estimates seem more than reasonable. However, this was a nice car and consequently it was in demand. It sold for £10,100. Wow, I mean, wow, what a result. And it wasn't even the 6-litre V12 version. Amazing result. On to lot 238, a 1999 Subaru Impreza Turbo 2000 all-wheel drive. And this was bought by the Bangers and Cash Restoring Classics team back in October 2024 when they paid £3,400 for it. And now it's back following no doubt a lot of expenditure. Will they make a profit? Doubtful. A very attractive car nonetheless, so let's see how it did. And the bidding began at £5,000 and quickly rose as the bids came in while they just talked about it, finally selling for £15,250. We're now going to take a look at lot 280, a 1979 Colt 1400 GLX. When did you last see one of these? Quite a vibrant green, you sure wouldn't lose it in a car park. Coming from a deceased estate, the paperwork and keys have gone missing. Looks to be all original and a real time capture with 37,305 miles and very, very well kept. Surely can't be many of these left. An estimate of £2,500 to £3,500. Got to be worth more, surely. The bidding opened at £2,800 and the increments were set at £100. The little colt was in demand and it was back and forth with the bids, and the final bid secured the car for £8,000. Yet another excellent result. Moving on to lot 282, the 1984 Audi Quattro Turbo. And the first thing you think of is its successful rally history, and another car that's sure to cause a bit of interest, given that they only produced 11,452 cars worldwide, and that's hard to believe. Sounds very nice on tick over, and just the slightest blip of the throttle, and you're left in no doubt of its sporting pretensions. I think they have such an appeal to all age ranges, young and old, which is something that can't be said for most. And it's showing 132,815 miles. And it's got some nice black leather seats, which look in really nice shape, and no apparent wear and tear to the driver's bolster or piping. Now, although this car was registered in 1984, I suspect it may be an earlier built model, because as I understand it, in 1983 it saw a move from analog instruments to a green LCD instrument display. I think these cars are such a pleasing shape and they're pretty timeless. It needs a little tidy up under the bonnet and a new scuttle panel. Underneath, showing some corrosion on the seams of the sills, which need to be checked out and dealt with. I expect it's going to do well, so let's find out how it actually performed. Estimate 19,500 to 22,500, and the bidding opened at £20,500, and the bids just kept coming. There was a lot of interest in this one, and at one point Paul said, "I'm never going to get the hammer down on this one, am I? I hope you've not booked your teas." And the final bid of £26,500 secured the Audi. The next lot up is 294, and that's the 1980 Triumph TR8. So it's the TR7 with the 3.5 Rover V8 engine. And it's the genuine thing, one of approximately 2,750 cars built. And of course, mostly sold to the North American market, the US and Canada, which is where they were aimed at. And I've got to say, I'm quite smitten with this one. And it appears to be a real bargain with an estimate of £3,000 to £4,000, which in my opinion, it's too cheap. It's got to be worth more. And this car came from a nice dry state to tell us it's an ex-Texas car, showing 53,000 miles. The vendor tells us that the engine has been rebuilt and run in, and it's fitted with a Holly carb and an Offenhauser manifold, along with a twin stainless exhaust. Also comes with electronic ignition and an uprated camshaft, and comments that it goes like manure off a shiny shovel. They also include a new hood. What would I do with this one? Well, there may be certain aspects that would benefit from a little cosmetic improvement, but to be honest, the body isn't that bad at all, and it appears to be very sound indeed. The platinum silver paintwork never had that much of a shine as I recall, so I'd leave it as original and I'd just enjoy it. Equally, I wouldn't even bother converting it to right-hand drive. I'd leave it as it was originally built. I'd perhaps deal with the roof, maybe. Tidy the interior a little and give it just a good cleaning. And particularly underneath, I'd apply some rust preventative. I could be quite tempted by this one, and I like it very much. It has a certain charm. Bidding opened at £4,600, and the hammer finally falling at £6,000. Lot 310, the Morris Ital 1.7 SLX. The SLX being the top of the range. And the SLX was available with either a 1.3 or a 1.7 engine. Its predecessor, the Ital HLS, was also available with the 2-litre O-Series engine, and they also had a vinyl roof, both of which were dropped when the updated SLX model was released. Vinyl roofs had had the day. This was the last incarnation of the Morris Marina, and it gained its name Ital after Giuseppe Giugiaro's Ital Design Studio, who had been employed by BL to re-engineer the Marina, which had been in production since 1971. The Ital design, however, never played a part in its new design. This was all done in-house at BL by Harris Mann. Production of the Ital ran from 1980 to 1984. Now, I have to admit, I have a soft spot for these, having owned a 1983 1.3 SLX myself. And this car is exactly like mine in that it's finished in Nautilus blue, and the interior has the same Savannah ribbed velour. Nautilus blue, it's a lovely colour, and mine had a good depth of shine. Now, you may not be able to see it, but it also had green sun-dimmed glass. And I note that this car's lost its headrests. It's showing 79,000 miles, and it looks to need a bit of work on the body, but it doesn't look to be anything too challenging. The Ital was the last car to wear the Morris badge. Estimate £1,000 to £2,000, which seems reasonable. Did it sell? Of course it did. I'm pleased to say these cars now have a good following, and it achieved more than respectable £1,700. Up next, lot 340, the VW Passat CL. What I would call a flat front, but I understand in Germany they call it the nose bear. The grille being integrated into the lower part of the bumper, and the VW logo acted as an air vent. They're an ugly looking car in my opinion, and have a face only a mother could love. So why have I selected it? Well, because it's a rare survivor, and it's a long time since I've seen one. And it's a one owner from new with just 24,730 miles. Estimate £3,000 to £4,000. The bidding opened at £3,000 and it rose all the way to £3,200, at which point it was declared as sold. I'm going to take a very quick look at lot 354, the 1988 Toyota Supra, because it seems a bargain at its estimate of £3,000 to £4,000. It's a lot of car for the money, and it looks nice in the red metallic. 115,000 miles, and it looks to be in reasonable shape. So let's see how it performed on the day. Opening at £5,250, I knew it was just too cheap. It sold for £6,750, which I think seems quite a good buy. Also, very quickly, I've picked out lot 368, which is a 2003 Rover 75 1.8 Club SE in Starlight Silver. Now, the model range consisted of the Classic, the Club, and then the Connoisseur. So this is the mid-range model. And it's got just 20,000 miles, and it's another one owner from new. Again, estimated at £3,000 to £4,000. It appeared it was just going to be a provisional sale on this one at £2,700, but with a bit of prodding from Jack, he managed to squeeze a few more bids, taking it above the lower estimate of £3,000, with it finally selling above the upper estimate for £4,100. Lot 370, the 1991 Ford Fiesta XR2i. And it's not the first time this car has appeared at Mathewsons, because it made its last appearance back in September 2023 when it sold for £3,900 plus commission and VAT. And it was a car that featured in Bangers and Cash when they called to collect it from its garage. And we're told it was driven in 20 years earlier and never made it back out. But what a transformation. And okay, so you're not going to be able to buy a new one, but this looks like the next best thing. And it looks very nice in the red, nicely detailed under the bonnet, and the underside is more than impressive. Now, a lot of time and money has gone into making this car look as good as this, and the tell is it's had a nut and bolt rebuild, and boy does it show. 111,000 miles, but the engine has also been rebuilt, and it's covered less than 2,000 miles since. The estimate, £17,000 to £20,000. What do you think? Is that too much? Yes, it's a lot of money, but paying for all that work could set you back a whole lot more. So let's go and see how it did. Jack started the lot by adding, I've got a cheeky bid of £14,000 to start it off. But it struggled, with the hammer falling on a provisional bid of just £15,000. And although that's good money, I think the market may have caught up with the fast forwards over the last couple of months, with prices dropping back on quite a few sales compared to what they were. Do you like a challenge? Then what about this? Because I'm sure this will be a challenge. Lot 378, the 1965 Lancia Flavia Vignale convertible, and it comes with its hard top. Started life in 1964 and one of only 40 right-hand drive cars built, this being car number 23. We're told that in 2017 it was pulled out of a barn, and at that time it cost the owner £10,000. Since that time, the brightwork's all been re-chromed at a cost of £5,000, and it comes with £1,000 of blue leather for the interior. The body's been stripped back, and apparently a lot of the expensive welding has been done, we're told. But this is not a car for the faint-hearted. It's submit best bid. Was there a buyer? Was there anybody brave enough? Let's find out. Well, there were at least two bids, but it was a provisional sale at £7,500. Next up is lot 410, and it's a 1921 Indian Scout, finished in the typical red and gold livery. And it's an American motorbike with a rich history and a true pedigree. Founded in 1901 by George Hendy and Oscar Hedstrom, they were built by the Hendy Manufacturing Company in Springfield, Massachusetts until 1953. The Hendy Manufacturing Company changed its name to the Indian Motorcycle Company in 1923. This bike was built in 1921, which is the same year that Rolls-Royce also opened its factory in Springfield, where they built cars until 1931. And the Rolls-Royce factory was incidentally on Hendy Street. The Indian Motorcycle Factory team took the first three places in the 1911 Isle of Man Tourist Trophy. And it would be wrong if I didn't mention Burt Munro and the Fastest Indian. Between 1962 and 1967, Burt Munro, who came from Invercargill, New Zealand, used a modified 1920 Indian Scout to set 3 land speed records, and they were set in 1962, 1966 and 1967. He set the under 1000cc world record at Bonneville on August 26, 1967, and this record still stands. At the age of 68, he was riding a 47-year-old machine. He made his 14th and final visit as a spectator in 1975. Quite a remarkable true story, which was dramatised in the 2005 film The World's Fastest Indian. Burt was played by Anthony Hopkins, and he was quite a character. It's a great film. If you've never seen it, I can highly recommend it. And what Burt achieved was incredible. Estimate 20 to 25,000. And Derek took to the podium on this one and told us there's a lot of interest as he reeled off the bids from £12,000. But the final bid of £17,000 wasn't enough, he said, to submit it to the vendor, and it would have to come back for the September sale. It's the sort of bike I'm sure would be of interest to Mike Wolfe of American Pickers. Lot 418, another low mileage car, this time a 1982 Volvo 244DL with under 19,000 miles, estimate £12,000 to £14,000. It only achieved a bid of £11,000, so it failed to sell. On to lot 450, and this time it's a 1902 Oldsmobile. How often do you see something sold come up for sale? This certainly represents what early motoring was about. A limited market, no doubt, but good to see nonetheless. Estimate £25,000 to £30,000. And as Derek commented, any London to Brighton entry you could normally expect to start with a 4. And it opened at £20,000 and the second bid appeared at £20,100. Derek said, no, we're not having that, we're taking bids at £1,000. And after a few goes, the bidding then began to follow suit, with the hammer finally dropping at £34,000. Lot 524, the Austin Champ, which was built between 1951 to 1956, and it was primarily built for use by the military. The idea being to reduce reliance on American vehicles and therefore foreign expenditure. Because remember, following World War II, this was still the export or die period. And although we know them as the Champ, it was actually the civilian name given. The vehicle was inspired by the Willys MB Jeep. Their formal title was the Quarter Ton Truck CT, which stood for Combat shortened, Model WN1. Austin were awarded a contract to produce 15,000 vehicles for the military at Cofton Hackett, a former aircraft factory on the outskirts of the Longbridge factory. The early cars had a 2.8 litre Rolls-Royce engine, which Austin later built under licence. To allow Austin some commercial benefit from the contract, they were later allowed to produce some vehicles for civilian use. These were called the Champs Model WN3, and most of these use a modified Austin A90 Atlantic engine as a cheaper option, but they could be ordered with the Rolls-Royce engine. Approximately 500 civilian Champs were built, most going to export markets. It turned out that for military use, these were expensive, costing £1,200 in 1951. And the Land Rover, which was also in use by the military, was about half the price. Due to the vehicle's limited forms of use, this led to the contract being amended with Austin after 11,000 trucks had been built, 4,000 short of the original contract. They were later replaced with Land Rovers. Now we're told that this one is a 1967, which suggests that it's an ex-military, and it was registered in its year of sale. When it came to the sale, there didn't seem to be much interest, the hammer falling on its maiden bid of £9,750, which fell far short of its estimate. It would appear to have been a provisional sale. Quick mention for lot 617, and that's the Fiat 500 Ferrari edition. So we had the Maserati one earlier, and this is the Ferrari edition. It had 4,500 miles on the clock roughly, and it sold for £30,250. Moving on to lot 636, a 1998 Vauxhall Tigra. This one's got the 1.6 Ecotec engine. Once a common sight, but now becoming an endangered species, I think. It looks rather smart in its star silver paintwork, and I've got to say I found it rather appealing. But the delights don't end there, as it's a one owner from new with a mere 18,617 miles recorded. And to top it off, it's a limited edition model, the Checkers, and it features a grey leather interior, electric tilt and slide sunroof, along with a boot spoiler. Looks to be in fantastic condition, and it's a lovely little car. Estimate £3,000 to £4,000. And it's sold to a buyer in Huddersfield for £3,650. And now for something extra special, and that's lot 656. It's the Mark I Vauxhall Astra GTE, and I think possibly this is the start of the show. White, the best colour for one of these, and isn't it sublime? This has been the subject of a proper restoration, and boy has it been done well. It's had a full glass out repaint, full engine rebuild, new radiator hoses, along with a full gearbox rebuild, and all the casings have been vapour blasted. The list of works goes on and on. Suffice to say, if you couldn't afford a new one or you missed out, then this is as near to new as you're likely ever to find. Possibly better than new. Proper job, as they might say in Cornwall. I dare say I'd rather have one of these than an Escort. This is going to sell, isn't it? But for how much will it sell for? And the estimate's £17,000 to £18,000. I think there could be a feeding frenzy on this one. And I'm prepared to stick my neck out and say I could even see it going mid to late 20s. Let's see how it got on. Well, the bidding started at £18,000 and it was going up in increments of just £100. And like the film, it was fast and furious, and a fresh bidder joined the fray from Ripon at £24,400. And it was now between Ripon and Cheshire as the battle continued, with it finally selling to Cheshire for £29,000. And I think this could be a record price. I believe that a Mark II GTE sold previously for £27,000 with WB and Sons at Killingworth in Newcastle. On to lot 732, a 1965 Mercedes-Benz 220 convertible. These are really lovely cars. They're very well built, and they come from an era when they just exuded quality. It's attractively priced with an estimate of 24 to 28,000 pounds, and I think that this reflects the fact that you may want to do some work. And I would say that if you can afford to do it, it's well worth doing. And I would be thinking the best thing to do would be engine out and detailed, a good paint job, and fresh chrome. And it has the makings of being something rather spectacular. Bidding for this one began at 18,250, with the hammer falling at 19,500 as a provisional sale. And I know it needs work, but that's cheap if you can get it anywhere near that amount. And if you can do the work yourself, it's a steal. Lot 814, a 1980 Vauxhall Chevette 2300 HS. And I think this is another car that's likely to attract a bit of attention. This car came about because Vauxhall wanted to increase the racing pedigree, and they decided to get into the international rally scene. This led to the development of the HS and the HSR. The HS produced 135 brake horsepower from its 2.3 litre engine, which outpaced the Ford RS2000 in a straight line. And if that wasn't bad enough for Ford fans, the more potent HSR version later appeared on the scene. The HS went on sale in 1978, and it was built in limited numbers, but they had to build at least 400 to satisfy homologation rules. It came with a sporty body kit, and they were all painted silver with red decals, and they were complemented with an interior which had red tartan seating. They also came with a Getrag 5-speed gearbox. In a bid to try and sell more, they also built a handful which were finished in black. They were retrimmed and they were badged the HSX. And it was in 1980 that we also saw the rarer HSR go on sale. Based on the HS, it got further modifications to the rear suspension mountings. It got rear disc brakes, a twin clutch plate, and a more aggressive looking body kit. Power by this time had been increased to 150 brake horsepower, and it's reckoned there were only 30 to 50 HSR ever built. Estimate £6,500 to £9,500. And it was already bid to 10,250 prior to the sale, with it achieving a sales figure on the day of £12,500. Hope you've enjoyed the video, and once again I would ask, if you have, please consider pressing the like button, because at least it tells me I'm heading in the right direction, and it also helps the channel to grow. Thanks again for your interest and for watching, and until next time, take care.